Today, President Obama addressed the Veterans of Foreign Wars Convention in Phoenix. Outside the convention hall, one man wore an AR-15 semi-automatic assault rifle strapped to his shoulder, as well as a pistol on his hip. No, he was not a police officer. No, he was not a Secret Service officer. He was just a guy showing up strapped to an event featuring the President of the United States. The Associated Press reports that in total, about a dozen people were on site outside the convention hall today, visibly carrying firearms. Again, not police officers, not Secret Service officers, just regular citizens turning up to be seen carrying weapons near the president. Yet again. Last week, there was this man in New Hampshire waiting for President Obama to arrive at a town hall event there. The man had a loaded handgun strapped to his leg. He was holding a sign that read, "It is time to water the tree of liberty." Which, of course, is a reference to Thomas Jefferson's famous words that were worn on a T-shirt by Timothy McVeigh on the day that he bombed the Murray Building in Oklahoma City. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. At the same event for President Obama in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, a 62-year-old man named Richard Terry Young was arrested and charged with two misdemeanors after sneaking past security officials and into Portsmouth High School a few hours before President Obama was due to arrive. Mr. Young was found inside the school. He was allegedly carrying a knife. When officers searched his pickup truck, they found a .38 caliber Kel-Tec semi-automatic pistol hidden inside a bag with a round in the chamber. I'm sensing a theme here, one that requires some explanation. As far as I understand it, you can't even fly a small plane into the airspace over the White House. In fact, the FAA often bans aircraft anywhere near the president's destination when he travels outside of D.C. But it's kosher to bring your AR-15 to an event featuring the President of the United States? Really? Joining us now is Joseph Petro. He served for 23 years as a special agent and is an executive in the Secret Service. He's also author of the book, Standing Next to History, An Agent's Life Inside the Secret Service. Mr. Petro, thanks very much for being here.
Rachel, my pleasure.
Today, according to the AP, there were a dozen people who weren't security officers or police carrying firearms at this event where the president was. I don't know if the guns were loaded. There's no reason to assume that they weren't. How does the Secret Service plan protection for that type of situation?
Well, that's not something the Secret Service often encounters. You know, the Secret Service has been protecting presidents for a long time, and there are a whole series of processes and procedures that they go through to create perimeters, and each of those perimeters become more and more difficult to penetrate, up and right to the end where the agents are actually around the president. But I think this is less a Secret Service issue and more an issue for all of us. You know, when you said a few days ago that the possibility of American politics turning to violence or terrorism at the fringe is not all that theoretical. I would argue that the vitriolic political rhetoric we're hearing, some of it from seemingly responsible people, is stimulating a lot of these foolish stunts. And they're not very helpful. And I think they're dangerous, actually. And I think they're dangerous for two reasons. One is it's hard enough to protect the president. The Secret Service and the local police are being distracted from that duty to keep our president safe. And I think the second reason, and maybe even more serious, is the fact that it could incite or encourage one of those individuals at the fringe that you mentioned from doing something really dangerous and perhaps violent against the president or some other person. So I think this is not a helpful situation, and maybe the politicians should look at lowering some of the rhetoric to try to create a more positive atmosphere.
I understand that depending on the state, people have a range of rights to carry and display weaponry. Yes. At what point does the Secret Service have the right to say, actually, the threat of an assassination attempt preempts those rights, so they could remove someone or at least confiscate the weapon? Well,
you know, I mentioned the perimeters. I mean, we could expand, the Secret Service could expand those perimeters even further. Right. I mean, a mile away. I don't know. I mean, theoretically, that's possible. And the Secret Service would have a right then to take and prevent anyone from entering that perimeter with a weapon. But I think just to do this at all as a stunt is just irresponsible.
I think whether or not these individuals pose an individual threat to the president, it does seem clear that I mean, as you say, it's a stunt. It certainly seems like an implied threat of force. And when you make strategic decisions about security, protecting a high-value target like the president, do you factor in the sort of material consequences of a dangerous atmosphere, of an atmosphere in which the threat of force is endemic?
I think it's probably one of the fundamental principles of the Secret Service is to create an atmosphere of calm and quiet around the president. I mean, that's really what the Secret Service tries to do, so that anything that happens that's out of character to that quiet atmosphere is noticed. It's not in the Secret Service's interest to have this kind of these theatrics going on around. Clearly, those people are not dangerous to the president at that moment. You know, they're outside the building, or they're a block away, or you know, they're not an immediate danger to the president. But what they're creating is an atmosphere that could become dangerous for the president, and that's what would concern me, and I'm sure it concerns the Secret Service.
Joseph Petro served for 23 years as a special agent and executive in the Secret Service. The book is called Standing Next to History: An Agent's Life Inside the Secret Service. Mr. Petro, this is really, really invaluable insight. Thank you for coming in. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks.